Beautiful souls, and welcome back to Gaia Sanctorum. This is Astroherbalism Apothecary, where we deep dive into one plant each week through the 5 bodies framework to give you a greater understanding of the medicine. I want you to close your eyes for a moment, if you're somewhere that you can do that safely. I want you to imagine someone. She's older. She is unhurried. She moves through a warm kitchen that smells like something good on the stove and dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. She does not ask you what is wrong before she feeds you. She does not need you to explain yourself. She simply sets something warm in front of you and sits down beside you and waits. This is the grandmother. This is the plant spirit of Milky Oat. When I sat with her in meditation, this is exactly who she showed me. A calm, sweet, deeply rooted grandmother who comes with sweetness and love before she comes with anything else. Not urgent, not demanding, just nourishing. And here is what I want you to hold as we move through this episode together. The nervous system cannot be asked to perform until it has been fed. This is the entire clinical thesis of this plant. Before she asks anything of you, she feeds you. If you are here because you are exhausted, truly bone deep exhausted, if you are running on empty and have been for longer than you want to admit, if your nervous system feels like a frayed wire that has been carrying too much current for far too long, you are exactly where you need to be. The moon's Hearth-Keeper has been waiting for you. Let us begin, as we always do, with who this plant actually is. Milky Oat is Avena Sativa. It's a member of the Poaceae family, which is the grass family. You'll also find her called oat straw, oat grass, cat grass, and simply oats. In Chinese medicine, she carries the name Yen Mai. In Ayurveda, she is known as Jai. She's native to Iran and Iraq and has been cultivated for over 5,000 years. Roman expansion carried her into England and Scotland and Northern Europe, where she became a staple grain for centuries. Today, she grows in temperate regions throughout the world, cultivated and wild, quietly feeding whatever finds her. A critical distinction that every herbalist must understand. When we speak of milky oats as medicine, we are speaking of something specific and time sensitive. Milky oat tops are the oat grain harvested during their milky stage. That moment when you squeeze the fresh seed and white milky sap is released. This window lasts approximately a week. It opens after flowering and then closes when the seed hardens into the oatmeal grain that we eat for breakfast. That milky sap, that moon milk, is where the Nervine medicine lives. Once that window closes, you no longer have milky oat tops. You have oat straw, which is the stem of the plant harvested during that same milky period. Both of them are medicinal and both of them are valuable, but they are not the same medicine. The milky tops carry the nervine alkaloids. The oat straw carries the mineral nutrition. So it's important that you hold that distinction. Now, the doctrine of signatures for this plant lives in her form. If you watch an oat stalk in the wind, it bends completely. It sways. It does not resist, and yet it doesn't break because its roots are deep and its belonging to the earth is total. Now, I wanted to kind of close it with this observation. As the oat plant sways gracefully in the changing winds, yet remains firmly rooted in the earth, so too will those who partake of her gifts. She teaches us that strength is not rigidity. Resilience is not resistance. The nervous system that can soften and receive and be nourished is the nervous system that endures. Now, the taste is sweet, the temperature is cooling. Specifically, the milky tops, which carry the nervine alkaloids that are responsible for the cooling action. The oat straw's deep mineral nutritive action tends toward neutral, but the milky tops we're working with today are cooling in their primary action. Now, this is a very moistening herb, and the tissue state that it addresses is dry atrophy. Matthew Wood, in Earthwise Herbal, places milky oat seed alongside slippery elm in the dry atrophy tissue state as a sweet tonic. This is a Chinese medicine-derived category within his 6 tissue state system. His mechanism is very precise. So sweet tonics contain carbohydrates and increase tissue nutrition. They feed what has been starved. Now, Sativa Popham in Evolutionary Herbalism names milky oats as one of the most important moistening plants in the entire Materia Medica, noting that the majority of herbs do have a net drying effect on the body. Milky oat is among the rare plants that restores moisture to tissue dried out by stress, depletion, or chronic exhaustion. This is a plant for the person whose well has run dry. Now, milky oat is a moon plant. So Sativa Popham's planetary tables list Avena explicitly under moon botanical examples alongside Artemisia. The moon's primary organ is the brain. Her system is the nervous and digestive systems, and her tissue is the marrow. Moon plants are hydrating, cooling, and nourishing. They restore the capacity to receive. They work on the foundational layer, not the sparkling surface of the nervous system, but in the deep marrow of it. Moon medicine is grandmother medicine. It feeds before it heals, and in the feeding, it heals. Now, there is also a Venus correspondence here, which Popham notes in the elemental associations of the sweet taste. So there are associations with earth and water elements, moon and Venus as co-rulers, and the sweet taste in all herbal traditions carries the planetary dignity of Venus, beauty, pleasure, nourishment, the capacity to receive love. You will feel this when you take it. She is sweet medicine in the most literal and complete sense. Now let's move on to the 5 bodies. So in the physical body, her primary domain is the nervous system. Milky oat is a nervine tropho-restorative. That word is important. Not just nervine, which means that she calms the nervous system, but tropho-restorative, which means she rebuilds it at the tissue level. So it's rich in vitamin B complex and calcium and magnesium content, and it soothes and strengthens the nerves structurally. But it is the fresh milky oat seed that carries the special alkaloids, including trigonelline and gramine, that feed and restore the nervous system in a way that dried preparations cannot fully replicate. This is why fresh tincture preparation is essential when milky oat is the therapeutic goal. Now, oats are considered one of the best herbs for feeding and restoring the nervous system, particularly in times of stress and in cases of nervous system weakness or exhaustion. The primary physical indications can include irritability and chronic fatigue, inability to focus, loss of libido, heart palpitations, occipital headaches extending down the spine, and insomnia caused by exhaustion or stress. And I want to pause on that insomnia indication because it matters clinically. The insomnia that she addresses is the insomnia of someone who is too tired to sleep, whose nervous system has been running on cortisol for so long that it has forgotten how to downregulate itself. Now, in the cardiovascular system, Milky Oat has a history of use as a cardiac tonic, and for easing heart palpitations, she is considered cardioprotective and cardiotonic by both Iranian traditional medicine and Ayurveda. The beta-glucan content produces significant decreases in total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. Berger describes this as oat improving blood flow by elasticizing veins and arteries. Now, in the endocrine, reproductive, and sexual health, there is a reason the phrase sowing your wild oats exists. Milky Oat supports sexual health and increases libido, not as an aphrodisiac, but by nourishing the nerves, moistening the endocrine glands, and improving circulation. So when the nervous system is this depleted, libido is one of the first things to disappear. Milky Oat restores it by restoring the foundation that it runs on. She is particularly beneficial during perimenopause and menopause, easing hot flashes, calming depression and mood swings, and reducing night sweats through her high vitamin and mineral content and endocrine balancing properties. Now, in terms of bone health, the high levels of magnesium and calcium and silica in both Milky Oat tops and oat straw support strong bones and are indicated in osteoporosis, possibly by providing hormonal support that promotes cellular growth. Now, as far as metabolic support and blood sugar regulation, in one intervention study, type 2 diabetes patients achieved approximately 40% reduction in required insulin dosage through a combination that included an oatmeal protocol. As far as skin and topical applications, the milky emollients released from oat into water are deeply soothing to irritated skin. Germany's Commission E approved external use of oat straw for inflammatory and seborrheic skin disease, especially those that include itching. Oat extract has been shown to protect dermal fibroblasts from oxidative damage. For topical application, Aviva Ram suggests extracting the milky liquid from rolled oats and applying it directly to the skin for conditions like PUPPP in pregnancy. It's an itchy rash that can develop on the stomach during pregnancy. David Hoffman's classic bath preparation is one of the most time-honored preparations in the Western tradition. You'll see how this bridges directly into the magical tradition when we get there. And then for postpartum and as a galactagogue. So the mucilaginous hydrating nature of oat grain makes it especially beneficial for postpartum nourishment and supporting breast milk production. It has been traditionally consumed immediately after childbirth across cultures. The grandmother medicine shows up here in the most literal sense. She nourishes the one who is nourishing. And then as immune support, in 1997, a study demonstrated that the beta-glucans in oat groats possesses immunomodulatory activity capable of stimulating immune function both in vitro and in vivo. The deep nutrition in oats builds what I call foundational immunity, not the acute firefighting kind, but the slow, deep resilience that comes from being genuinely well nourished at the tissue level. Now, let's move on to the mental body. So in the mental body, let's talk about cognitive restoration. So Milky Oat improves concentration and mental clarity, not by stimulating, but by nourishing the substrate that clear thinking runs on. A clinical study of elderly persons with below average cognitive performance found that oat herb extract could acutely improve attention, concentration, and task focus. Now, a double-blind randomized trial found that both single high doses and 4 weeks of supplementation significantly improved working memory and multitasking performance compared to a placebo. The highest dose also reduced physiological stress responses measured by electrodermal activity. So the mental body application in clinical terms: when the nervous system is depleted, cognitive function degrades first. Milky Oat restores the nervous system and clear thinking follows it. She doesn't sharpen a dull blade. She reforges it. Now, for managing depression, Hoffman's primary indication, nervous system weakness or exhaustion associated with depression. This is not the hot, inflamed, excessive depression of too much. This is the cold and dry and depleted depression of too little, of a system that has given everything and has nothing left. Now, Milky Oat is specific for the anxious, scattered Vata mind. She nourishes memory. She brings the scattered self back into coherence, not by forcing focus, but by feeding what makes that focus possible. And then in the emotional body, so the nervous system weakness or exhaustion following emotional trauma is one of Milky Oat's primary indications in the clinical literature. Oat straw infusion mellows mood, eases anxiety, combats daily stress, and resolves the sleeplessness that comes not from an overactive mind, but from an exhausted one. As a tincture, Milky Oats are specifically indicated for nervous system imbalances in more acute presentations, including drug and alcohol withdrawal. In these cases, Milky Oats tincture can be taken alongside daily oat straw infusions to support the nervous system through the withdrawal process. This is one of her most important and most underutilized clinical applications, and Skullcap is her primary combination partner for this work. Now, Sage Popham's framework gives us the deeper emotional picture. Milky Oat as a nervine relaxant releases held tension from trauma stored in the nervous system. Her moon emotional teaching addresses the core wound that she works on, which is emotional dryness, the inability to feel, the closing off that happens when a person has learned that their emotional needs are not going to be met. Her healing is moistening the emotional body, allowing those feelings to flow again. The person who has armored themselves against feeling because feeling wasn't safe, the person who learned early that their needs were not going to be received. This is the moon's Hearth-Keeper's patient, and she's known them her whole life. Now, in the subtle body, Milky Oat works primarily on the restoration of Wei Qi, the protective life force that surrounds and guards us. When we have been depleted by chronic stress, grief, overwork, or trauma, the Wei Qi gets thin. We become porous. We absorb what is not ours. We are buffeted by every energetic current that passes through our space. Milky Oat, as a sweet tonic and a moon plant, rebuilds that deep yin that the way Key draws from. Working with the governing vessel and the heart meridian, she addresses the exhaustion pattern where the Shen, the spirit housed in the heart, has become unmoored from its foundations. The scattered, anxious, cannot land quality of deep nervous system exhaustion is a Shen disturbance rooted in deficiency. She does not sedate the Shen. She nourishes the vessel the Shen lives in. At the auric level, consider Milky Oat for clients whose field feels thin or leaky or undercharged. She's one of the primary auric nourishment herbs in this materia medica. She thickens the field from inside out, not by creating a barrier, but by filling what was empty. Now, the chakra associations are primarily the root chakras as the seat of foundation, belonging, and safety. The sacral chakra as the seat of creative life force and emotional flow. The moon's Hearth-Keeper works from the ground up. She establishes safety before she invites opening. Now let's move on to the spiritual body. The soul signature of Milky Oat lives in her doctrine of signatures. She bends completely in the wind. She does not resist. She does not stiffen against what moves her. And she does not break because her roots are deep and her belonging to the earth is total. She teaches the capacity to be moved without being destroyed is not a weakness. It is the deepest form of strength. The soul-karmic work of this plant is ancient and simple. You must be fed before you can be asked to give. The grandmother who always comes with sweetness and love is not just a comforting image. She is the answer to that soul level question that underlies most nervous system depletion. Was I nourished? Did anyone feed me before they asked me to feed others? The moon trauma patterns that Popham identifies as lunar plant medicine, mother wounds, abandonment, emotional neglect, are the karmic territory that this plant works in. The person who learned to function without being nourished, who learned to need nothing, who learned to give from an empty well because that was the only way to be loved. This is who the moon's Hearth-Keeper comes for. Her soul teaching is one of permission. You are allowed to be nourished. You're allowed to rest. You are allowed to let the grandmother sit beside you and wait until you eat. In the plant spirit tradition, the milky white sap she releases in her brief harvesting window is her offering. This is moon milk, visible, literal, time-sensitive nourishment that the plant makes available for 1 week and then withdraws. There is a teaching in that window. You have to show up at the right time. You have to be present for the nourishment when it is offered. Now, I'm including a new section. I'm going to go over some of the magical uses of this plant. So, Milky Oat is a moon plant in the magical tradition, and her primary magical associations flow directly from her medicine: restoration, nourishment, emotional comfort, abundance, protection, and stability. Now, the moon milk signature, the milky white sap that gives this plant her name, carries a special affinity for lunar magic. It is literally called moon milk in certain traditions. This makes her particularly potent for new moon ritual work focused on beginnings, renewal, rebuilding, the magic of starting over from a fed and nourished place rather than a depleted one. Now, for abundance and prosperity, the generous, nutrient-dense nature of the oat plant links her to rituals for attracting prosperity and fertility and abundance. She is not the lightning strike of abundance magic. She is the steady, slow filling of the larder, the grandmother who makes sure there is always enough. Now, as far as ritual practices go, herb bundles or a medicine pouch, dried or fresh milky oats placed in a cloth bundle worn against the skin deepens the connection to the plant's medicine. Particularly useful when actively working through nervous exhaustion or burnout. She also works great for sleep magic. So you could take the milky oat tops placed under your pillow to encourage healing dreams and nervous system restoration throughout the sleep cycle. You could do a ritual bath and add it to bath water to cleanse and soothe the body and the mind. Notice that this bridges the magical and the clinical traditions entirely. Hoffman's clinical oat straw bath and the ritual bath are the exact same medicine delivered through different doors. Now, you can also do a harvesting ritual. Harvesting on the spring equinox or a new moon is considered particularly potent in the folk tradition. It can also be used for protection and stability. Milky oat is used in spells for security and safety, both internally and externally. The hearth is the original place of protection, the center of the home, the fire that keeps the cold out, the place where the family gathers. The moon's Hearth-Keeper in magical practice is the herb you call on when you need to rebuild your sense of safety from the ground up, when you need to remember that you belong somewhere, that there is a place that holds you. Now let's move on to some clinical energetics. So the milky oat patient is depleted. She's not inflamed. She is not excessive. She has been running on empty so long that the tank shows nothing. She keeps going anyways because she doesn't know how else to be. In the 6 tissue states framework, dry atrophy is her primary clinical home. Now, in Ayurvedic terms, she balances Vata and Pitta, but may aggravate Kapha. Do not reach for her where there is damp stagnation. The sweet, moistening quality will thicken what is already too thick. Her clinical portrait: chronic fatigue, inability to focus, scattered thoughts, occipital headaches, loss of libido, heart palpitations, emotional flatness or tearfulness from exhaustion, insomnia from depletion, the depression of too little rather than too much, the person who has been a giver for so long that they have forgotten how to receive. Now, some combination partners to know: skullcap for acute nervous system restoration and addiction support. You can blend her with lemon balm for anxious exhaustion, with chamomile for an exhausted nervous system with spasmodic presentation, linden for nervous system calming with cardiovascular involvement. You can blend her with nettle and raspberry leaf for deep nutritive building alongside milky oat. Now, as far as preparations and dosing goes, the critical rule for Nervine action: you must use fresh milky oat seed in tincture preparation. Dried preparations do not preserve the alkaloids responsible for the Nervine action. Now, some herbalists recommend blending the fresh tops with your solvent to maximize potency. You can also freeze fresh milky oat tops immediately after harvesting to preserve their medicine. So, to make a fresh tincture, it would be a 1-to-2 ratio of fresh seed, and you could take that up to 4 times daily. Standard tincture would be 1-to-5. in 25% alcohol. You could take that 3 times daily. You could make a nutritive infusion of the oat straw, usually a long infusion, 1 ounce of dried oat straw steeped in 4 cups of boiling water for 4 to 12 hours. This is going to be the preparation for drawing out the full mineral nutrition. You can make it overnight and drink it the next morning. Let the grandmother do her work while you're sleeping. Now, for a topical application, you can take the milky liquid extracted from rolled oats and apply it directly to the skin. So it'd be the same concept as an oatmeal bath. Now, some safety and contraindications. Celiac disease and gluten sensitivity. Oats are frequently processed in facilities that also handle wheat and other gluten-containing grains and may become contaminated. The research picture on celiac and oats is complex. Some herbalists note that people who are gluten intolerant but not allergic typically do well with oat straw infusion. However, some clients with celiac and gluten intolerance are unable to tolerate even uncontaminated oats from tested facilities, including herbal formulations that contain oat straw or oat seed. If you are a person with strong gluten sensitivities, you should seek herbal oat products that are known to be uncontaminated and tested. Clients who have a demonstrated intolerance to uncontaminated oats should avoid herbal formulas containing oat products entirely. Now, a stabilization phase of 6 symptom-free months on a gluten-free diet is suggested before introducing any kind of oat products. Now, this is not a blanket contraindication, but it is a meaningful intake question that belongs on your forms, or if it is yourself, something you should really think about and take into consideration. There are no other contraindications noted in the clinical literature. The moon's Hearth-Keeper does not demand anything of you. She does not ask you to perform your recovery. She does not need you to be further along than you are. She simply sets something warm in front of you, sits down beside you, and waits. If your nervous system has been carrying too much for too long, if the well has run dry, if you have forgotten what it feels like to be genuinely nourished, she is the plant. She comes with sweetness and love. She always has. If you want to go deeper with Milky Oat, the Gaia Sanctorum Materia Medica Workbook is linked below. It is a blank resource to help you start your plant journey and is a place where you can record all of the things that you learn in your relationship with these plants. If this episode resonated with you, if you recognize yourself in the portrait of the depleted person who has been giving from an empty well, come find us in Empowered Authenticity Community. It is a free space built for integration, not fragmentation. The link is below. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to hit like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will be notified every time a new video drops. Again, thank you for being here. I'm Danielle, and I'll see you in the next one.